Hey everyone, how's it going? I come to you today with yet another tag. And this is the end of the year book tag. This was created way back in the day by Ariel Bissett, and I was actually tagged by Aaron Facer. So thank you for the tag, Aaron. This is a tag sort of looking at the end of the year. And by the time this video posts, it will be December, so there's not much of the year left, but I think the tag is still applicable to me because there is still one more month, and the tag also asks about the next year. So, the first question is, are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? And the two that come to mind for me are The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, which I've slowly been rereading in this last quarter of this year as a part of the read-along hosted by Ryan from Steaking Stories. And I have read through The Two Towers, so I just need to read The Return of the King. But I want to finish it by the end of the year. Shouldn't be challenging. The Return of the King is the shortest of the three sections, so I have no worries about getting that finished. And then the other one that comes to mind, and I'm not sure it's going to happen because it's a buddy read, and so I have to kind of accommodate my buddy readers. But the other book is Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom by David Blight, his biography of the eponymous historical person. And I'm buddy reading this with Peg from the History Shelf, Bill Rutenberg, and Patrice Jones. And at the current recording, so it may have changed by the time this video posts, but at the current recording, I am approximately halfway through the book. And with one more month in the year, it's possible that I'll finish this, but we may also need to just continue our buddy read into next year. But it'd be cool if this could be like my last book of the year. But yeah, that's the other one that came to mind. Number 2 is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? No, I'm not big into seasonal reading, really, so yeah, I don't have an answer. The only book that comes to mind is that this Christmas season I do finally want to read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I have purchased myself a copy, which I forgot to grab before I recorded this video, but I want to read A Christmas Carol, and I think, obviously, it's the Christmas season, and it's A Christmas Carol, so I'm excited to read that. For Christmas time. So I know there are some people who read A Christmas Carol every year, and I don't know if I'll become one of them, but it certainly feels like a seasonal read. Number 3, is there a new release you're still waiting for? No, not really. I'm not big into new releases, so I don't have much of an answer for that. Number 4, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? Well, I've mentioned A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I want to read that. The second book I would list is The Farthest Shore by Ursula K. Le Guin. And those are really the two. I don't plan to get a ton of reading done in December, mostly because I already have some books to work on and finish, and because I'm currently buddy reading Unquiet by Liv Ullmann with Jason from Old Blues Chapter and Verse, so I need to finish that. And I also, the reason that I want to get The Farthest Shore by Ursula K. Le Guin read is because I think I'm going to, over the course of the holiday season, going to be reading through a bind-up of all of the Earthsea books that has been published. And I've already read the first 2 previously, and so I'm going to start with the 3rd book. And so I might also get to the 4th book, I don't know. So that's the main reason that I don't have a 3rd book, because I'm just going to be really focused on that project, which is a really big book. Not a difficult book, but a really big book. So that could turn into the 3rd book, right? I don't remember the name of the book after The Farthest Shore, but that might be my 3rd book. So anyway, so those are my 2 books, plus possibly a 3rd. Number 5, is there a book you think could still shock you and become your favorite book of the year? Well, there's something to be said for A Christmas Carol. I think it could maybe not become my favorite book of the year, but certainly become one of my top reads of the year, because I grew up absolutely loving the movie adaptations of A Christmas Carol. I've seen several, multiple times. I love the Patrick Stewart one in particular, but there's also a much older one called Scrooge from the 1930s, which is also great. I really like the Jim Carrey one, and I've seen some others. I've also seen a Disney version of A Christmas Carol with like Mickey Mouse as as what's his face, Jimmy, the poor guy who works for Scrooge, whoever that character's named, and with Scrooge McDuck as Scrooge, and so on and so forth. And I just love the story. I've always loved it, and so there's a possibility that I will read the book and it'll be one of my top books of the year. It could also be that I'll just read it and I'll just be like, well, yeah, basically what I expected to happen happened, you know? And so it may be fun, but not necessarily a top read. I don't know. We will see. But that's the possible answer that came to mind. And then number 6, have you already started making reading plans for 2022? I have 2 ideas in mind for possible reading plans in 2022. And they're both relatively big projects, one significantly bigger than the other. I'll start with the smaller one. The smaller one is that I want to read through the entirety of the box set of Samuel Beckett's collected works that I received for Christmas last year. I received this big box set, which I again forgot to grab before I recorded this video, this big box set of Samuel Beckett's works, not all of his works, but pretty much all of his major works. A lot of his novels, a lot of his plays, and some of his poetry, and some even of his nonfiction is in there. And I want to read through that entire box set, which will involve a lot of rereading, which I would love to do. But I also just feel like with Samuel Beckett being my favorite author of all time, I should try to, experience his works with some degree of comprehensiveness, and I think that this will be a good way of doing that. And I also just like the idea of, author spotlights. I like how some readers will devote an entire year to just making their way through all of the works of a certain author, and I've always wanted to do that, but just never quite had the motivation. And I feel like starting with my favorite writer would be a great way to do that. So that's one project. The other plan, which I haven't set in stone yet because I still have reservations about it, but I'm leaning towards doing this. And the other plan is to read only fiction in 2022. So only prose novels and maybe narrative poems, but not plays and not nonfiction. Only fiction. And the reason that I am considering this is because I, this year, read about a quarter fiction to 75% other things, not all nonfiction, but some plays, some sort of narrative poems, and a lot of nonfiction as well. But every reading year, I start saying, all right, I really need to read more fiction this year, more like real prose fiction, novels, short stories, whatever. And I never succeed. And I think a way for me to just finally read more fiction is to just, go cold turkey and read nothing but fiction for a year. Because I think I've read a lot less fiction than a lot of other book people, which is fine. You don't have to read fiction to be a real reader, obviously. You don't need to read any particular things to be a real reader. But I want to be a better fiction reader than I am, and I think a good way of doing that is to read more fiction. And obviously this would be a good way of doing that. There would be some exceptions. So I would still buddy read nonfiction with people. I have a lot of buddy readers out there who like to read nonfiction with me. I would still do that. And there are also a couple of books that I think I would just say, okay, you can read this book and this book, but no others. Just very specific exceptions to the rules. Yeah, I'm excited about the idea. The more I think about the idea, the more I like it. But I also I'm trepidatious about it because, I look at my shelves and I look at all of the nonfiction on my shelves. I have way more nonfiction on my shelves than fiction. I look at all the nonfiction on my shelves and I just think there's so many books there that I am so excited to read. And the idea of basically having to put them all off for a year is a little depressing. But on the other hand, those books aren't going anywhere. They'll still be around after 2022, right? Maybe 2023 can be a year of only nonfiction, right? Who knows? But I'm considering this idea strongly, so don't hold me to it yet. don't, if I come on to BookTube next year and I'm reading nonfiction, don't, comment like, wait, I thought you said you were only reading fiction, because I haven't set it in stone yet. But if I do, you all will be some of the first to know. You probably won't be the very first to know, but some of the first to know. So anyway, that's the last question. That's the end of the year book tag. I hope you all enjoyed. I am not going to tag anyone, but if you want to do the tag, then consider yourself tagged. But I will leave it at that and talk to you all later. Bye.